This video explains X chromosome linked inheritance, a familiar topic under genetics. You may be knowing there are two types of chromosomes, somatic chromosomes and allosomes. Now the somatic chromosomes are otherwise called autosomes. They carry genes which are responsible for the development of bodily characters. And the allosomes, if it's a female, there are X chromosomes. If it's a male, there are X and Y chromosomes. Now, the interaction between X chromosome and the autosomes, the genes on autosomes, and the interaction between genes on Y chromosomes and the autosomes, genes on autosomes, gives the individual either male characters or female characters. Now, some of the characters which are purely somatic in the sense common for both male and female, that may not that much differ in their expression according to the gender, that is either male or female, its expression will be similar, and such characters may be said pure somatic characters. Now you say the eye color, or even here we have given the blood character, Haemophilia, that is the blood clotting condition. And such characters not going to work according to the gender of individual, whether it is male or female. In both, the blood clotting process may occur in a similar way, not going to show any difference according to the gender of the individual. It's not going to see whether it is female or male that way. And that way I want you to understand pure somatic characters, independent of the gender of the individuals. So you assume any type of character basically determined by the genes which are present on the somatic chromosomes or autosomes or X chromosome or Y chromosomes. Now here, as we told already, some of the genes which are purely somatic, which are going to determine the pure somatic character. I want you to have a slight margin between pure somatic character and general somatic characters, because there are many more somatic characters which may define male and female in a different way. Even you say the hair, even the bodily character, some of the bodily characters with which you can differentiate male and female individuals. But some of the characters are purely somatic. It's not going to define according to the gender of the individual, as we told, like that of the blood clotting condition. So the genes which are responsible for blood clotting may be called pure somatic genes, is it not? And such genes are usually expected to be on somatic chromosomes. Now in the case of human being, if you say 22 pairs of autosomes or somatic chromosomes, and the genes which are responsible for such blood clotting characters, may be expected to be present on the somatic chromosomes in general. But what happens, these genes which are responsible for such pure somatic characters located on X chromosomes, either male or female. These genes, that is pure somatic, some of the pure somatic genes, instead of being on somatic chromosome, they are located on X chromosome. Accordingly, they are specially called as X-linked genes. So, if the genes which are on somatic chromosome, simply you say somatic genes. And if they are on X chromosome in general and involving in the differentiation of gender as male and female characters, you say X genes, the genes on X chromosomes, or genes on Y chromosomes. Even the Y chromosomes are specially called Hollandric genes. So that way, but here these genes which are purely somatic, not depending on the gender of individual, but they are present located on X chromosome, accordingly they are said X-linked gene. So it's very important to understand the definition. Then only you can have a clear idea about the examples and other explanations under this chapter. So here we have given the two familiar examples usually described in not only in genetics book, wherever there comes the word X-linked genes, particularly in human, these are the two examples familiar. Gene that cause color blindness. So here color blindness may be a general pure somatic character, both common for both male and female. But the gene, instead of being pure, so purely somatic, found on X chromosome. That's why it's taken as an example of X-linked genes. Similarly, the haemophilia. Now, the normal clotting process may be different here. Even there is no normal clotting process. Continuous bleeding of blood if there occurs any wound or hurt on the body of an individual. Instead of usually in individuals, the blood flow from a wound may be stopped in about a minute, within a minute. But in certain cases where there is no such control called haemophilia, the blood will flow continuously, and even it may be considered a disease, a disorder. So these are the two familiar examples discussed for the X-linked genes in human. Now here you say how the genes are inherited from one generation to next generation, and there is a slight difference between the inheritance of a normal gene. Normal gene, what we mean? Somatic genes on somatic chromosome, and X genes on X chromosome, Y genes on Y chromosome. It's very normal. But here it is X-linked because a somatic gene locates on X chromosome and its inheritance somewhat different from the inheritance pattern of the normal gene. That's why here we give such an illustration to show how it inherits from one generation to next generation. Now here you say there are two X chromosomes in a mother, and it stands for capital C, capital C. Simply a long line is given to differentiate it from small c. So now you assume it is a normal female carrying X chromosome, carrying the genes on X chromosome normal. That is the dominant. And here the father, male individual having one X chromosome and the other is Y. And regarding the X-linked inheritance, we need not consider Y. But anyway, in order to find out whether male or female, we have to make its appearance near X. So here you assume the gene responsible for the color blindness. Usually here C stands, here the C symbolized for that color blindness. So here capital C indicates normal, no color blindness. A color blindness that you may be knowing, the individual unable to differentiate the red and green that way. Even such individuals when tested while they go for getting driving license, they will not be issued driving license because of the presence of this color blindness problem. Because they may not differentiate red from green, you can assume what would happen. So here you say the female individual carries 2 X chromosome and both the genes on the X chromosomes are normal. So the individual for color distinction seems normal. And the male individual carrying the gene on X chromosome but it is recessive, that means it's color blind. Characteristically it is color blind. Now the gametes are formed. Now from the female there will be formed a gamete. You can assume there come the autosomes automatically and 1X, because the gametes will carry only the haploid set of chromosomes. So one of the X will get into the gamete, and because both the X chromosomes are capital C, carrying capital C dominant gene, and any of the X will have the capital C. But here there will be two types of gametes in the case of male because of the Y. So here the Y along with autosomes may be forming one type of gamete, 50%. And the X with that small c gene, that is color blind gene, will be produced 50%. Now when there occurs the union of the gametes between this female gamete and the male gamete, now here is formed one female in the F1 generation. In the next generation you assume there are produced a male individual and a female individual, the F1 individuals. Now the female, that is a daughter of this pair of parents, carrying 2X, but one of the X with capital C and the other X with a small c. Anyway, because of the presence of capital C, the expression will be normal. Phenotypic character you might have heard. That is, externally that a daughter seems to be a normal individual regarding the color distinction, but internally, genotypically, that you mean, at a chromosome level it carries small c, so it is carrier for color blind gene. But phenotypically it is normal, it seems normal, the female seems normal. But genotypically it carries heterozygous condition. That means one of the X chromosomes having capital C gene and the other X chromosome with a small c gene. And your brother, you see, having one X chromosome and one Y. Now this X chromosome received from his mother, and the mother carries capital C only. So, and Y has no any importance with carrying gene here. So this male individual is purely normal. There is no mention about the carrier, because here, because of the presence of two genes, capital C, small g, we call it as carrier of the gene. But here only one X and sufficient to make the character, capital C. What is said to be hemizygous. Hemizygous condition in the case of male, enable to produce the character. If it is dominant, the character will be normal. So here a normal son and a carrier daughter between these two parents. And then now you assume this daughter, carrier daughter, marries a normal man. Normal man in the sense one X and Y, that gene is capital C. And this daughter is carrier. And because of the presence of two types of genes, capital C in one X and small c in the other X, definitely we have to see the different types of gametes. 50% of the gametes with capital C, 50% of the gametes with small c. And in the case of the pair, male, with whom she was married, you see carrying two types of gametes, capital X with capital C and Y. And you see the individuals in the F2 generation, the second generation. Now, the daughter, there come two daughters. Just regarding this cross-exam illustration, you can assume there are two daughters, but one daughter receives both C capital. From mother a capital C, from father a capital C. And the other daughter having two x-chromosome but receiving small c from her mother, capital C from her father. So out of the two daughters, one is carrier, the other is normal. But regarding son, he will be receiving X from the mother, but the possibility for receiving 50% of individuals receiving capital C and the other 50% receiving small c. So assume that one of the sons receives capital X, that is capital C in one X, and the other son receives small c in his X. And as we already told, the character will be expressed in hemizygous condition in the case of male, particularly these X-linked characters. So here you assume color-blind grandson to a color-blind grandfather. This should be properly seen here. So the character, small c character, present with one father, grandfather, not passing through his son to the grandson. Here you see a simple line, a light line. The character of the grandfather passing through the daughter to his grandson. Can you see it clearly? So the character of one male will be passing to the grandson through his daughter, not through his son, not straight from male to male that way. Male to female, then from female to male. So this way you can find it different from the passage of normal somatic characters, general somatic characters. Accordingly, this type of inheritance is said to be criss-cross pattern. Criss-cross pattern or zigzag pattern. You have to remember this even in the examination point of view, because the pattern of inheritance of X-linked genes is specially called criss-cross pattern or zigzag pattern. Why? Why it's called criss-cross or zigzag? From grandfather to the daughter, through the daughter to the grandson. Not from male that way. But general somatic characters may possibly passing irrespective of the gender, either male or female, that way. That would come even straight. But here in the case of X-linked gene, it shows such an male to female, female to male passage. Accordingly, it is called a criss-cross pattern or zigzag pattern of inheritance. Which one? X-linked genes. And then some of the special features. As we told already, it is hemizygous. Even in hemizygous condition, in the case of male, these X-linked genes can be inherited. And it's passing from male to female, then from female to male, generation after generation. If it starts with the male, if it starts illustration with the affected male. So remember this. And whoever visits this page first time, subscribe and arrange to get a notification. And here I have one more slide. About the special features of X-linked genes. Yes, special features of X-linked genes. So it can express in hemizygous condition and a special feature. And then in the case of female, it can express only if it is two copies. That means both the x-chromosomes carry the recessive gene, then only the character will be expressed. Otherwise, the female seems normal even though she is carrier. Carrier in the sense one X having dominant gene, the other X having small gene, what we mean recessive gene. And then from females the alleles is 50% each. That way from the grandfather through the daughter to the grandson. That's what said to be the special feature. Already we told criss-cross pattern. And in the case of if it's present in male, it can pass only through the daughter, not through the son.